Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first fall video of the season, my fall book recs and my fall TBR. We're gonna start with my book recs and we're actually gonna start with a book I recently reread, The 7-Year Slip by Poston. I feel like I always recommend this book for fall, but the time travel aspect in this book, plus mixed with the New York City scene, it makes this book the perfect fall book. It's just so cozy. It makes me want to have a cup of tea and curl up and read this book on a cool fall morning. This book is about Clementine, whose aunt recently passed away, and with her passing, Clementine is gifted her aunt's apartment. And one day Clementine is coming home from work when her apartment slips 7 years into the past. There's just something about that time traveling mixed with the romance. It is perfect in my opinion. I think this is by far my favorite romance that I have ever read. I love this book so much, so if you were thinking about picking it up, I would say August is the perfect time to pick this book up, or even early September, or really anytime, honestly. Next up is The Bell Jar by Silvia Plath. There's something about classics that just give me that fall vibe. I think maybe it's just going back to school, and we would always read classics in school. I feel like I read most of my classics in school, although I will say recently I've been upping my classics game. I've been trying to get into reading more classics, which this is a book that I read recently, and it does start out in the summer, but you follow our main character in New York City summer and then it transitions into the fall time. And that transition into the fall is also when the deeper, heavier topics kind of come into play, because if you don't know anything about this book, we are following our main character Esther, and she is in college, which is why she's in New York City. She basically has this internship in New York City for the summer, and then when she leaves New York City, things kind of start to unravel for her. And even in New York City, you can kind of see she's a little bit disconnected. She's not super involved in everything. There's kind of like something missing in her, but then you see her slowly unravel, and it really takes a deep dive into mental health. So 100% need to check the trigger warnings. I would honestly recommend checking the trigger warnings for any of the books that I'm talking about, but this one particularly, I would definitely check the trigger warnings on. I think if you liked A Little Life, you would like this book, although I will say they are pretty different. I mean, this one's also like, I don't know, a fourth of the size of A Little Life, and it's a classic. And I did want to mention there are some things that are said in this book that are not okay, and I do not agree with them. And I honestly think part of the reason I liked this book so much was because of Silvia Plath's story, and a lot of people hypothesize that this book is kind of a reflection of herself and her mental health, especially because in her unabridged journals you see her dive into her mental health struggles. And I honestly really want to read that book. I don't know if I'll get to it this fall, but I feel like eventually, either fall or winter, I will probably pick up that book. My next book I want to recommend is The Midnight Library. This one has a really interesting premise. It is basically about, I believe it's a young girl, or not young, but she's like younger. I could be wrong because I read this a while ago, but basically she has died, and in their version of this afterlife, you go to this library and you kind of pick out books and you get to try out different lives. And basically her goal is to try to find one of these lives that brings her joy. This is another book that explores mental health, and it also talks a little bit about how the choices in your life affect you, because she gets to choose between all these different lives that she could have led if she just made a different decision or did something differently. This next book is a pretty popular one, but it is popular for a reason because it is so good. This is Lessons in Chemistry. It is historical fiction, and I love historical fiction. For some reason, I particularly love historical fiction in the fall and also the spring. I don't know why, but they just give me fall and also spring vibes at the same time. Don't ask me, they just do. But this one in particular discusses a lot about women's rights, which obviously is something I really appreciate, but it talks about that a lot because our female main character is a scientist, and I believe this book is set in the 1970s? 60s, I think, actually. Wait, let me just look it up. Yes, it takes place during the 1950s and early 1960s in California. But basically our main character is a chemist, and she struggles a lot in her field because people don't take her seriously because she is a woman, and it is very character focused, but it does it in a way that will 100% hold your attention. So if it being character focused makes you a little bit nervous, don't let that stop you. I 100% recommend this book because it is so good. Well, obviously I recommend all these books, so I need to stop saying that, but if you like historical fiction and you've been thinking about picking this book up, take it as your sign. Even if you don't like historical fiction, dip your toe in the water, okay? I promise you're gonna enjoy it. I, of course, cannot go through this video without recommending you a thriller or a mystery, and this one is a thriller. I think it was my favorite thriller of last year, I believe, is when I read this book, and I actually thought about rereading it pretty recently, but I was like, no. Let me give it some time so I can forget more of the book, because I still remember like everything that happened in this book because it was just so good. Actually, I might have read it at the beginning beginning of this year. I don't remember, but that is The Therapist. I think that this is one of my favorite thrillers of all time. Basically, you have this couple that moves to a house and everyone is acting really weird and they don't really know why until it gets uncovered, and she's basically kind of trying to solve a mystery almost. Yeah, it says Alice becomes obsessed with trying to piece together what happened, but none of her new neighbors want to talk about it. Soon it becomes clear to Alice that things are not at all as they seem. I remember trying to read this book at night at one point and I literally had to put it down because it was starting to make me a little bit nervous. I am a little bit sensitive when it comes to scary things. I don't like to be scared when it comes to reading at night, and I do read a lot at night. But if you are someone that likes mysteries or thrillers, 100% recommend this book. And if you were around when I read this book, this was a book that I could not stop recommending for months after I read it. I 100% think that this is one of the most underrated mystery thrillers out there. I'm so glad I found it. I love finding hidden gems. Like, this was a book that my sister gave me that I hadn't seen anyone talk about ever. So definitely recommend this one. And if you read it, let me know what you think because I'm obsessed with this book. It's so good. Honestly, if you ask me for any thriller recommendation, I think I'm gonna give you this one. This is probably the one book that I'm gonna say, here, you should read this. Next up is Fifth Avenue Glamour Girl, which is yet another historical fiction. I love historical fictions, obviously, but this one in particular was so fun because it actually follows Estee Lauder, and anytime a historical fiction follows like a real person in real life, it always makes me so intrigued about their lives. So I want to read a couple biographies and just learn more about Estee Lauder as a person because I just loved this book so much. It follows Estee Lauder as well as like one of her best friends, which obviously the best friend is made up, but since it's a historical fiction, it does bring in some of that real elements to the story, and it follows Estee Lauder and how she grew her business. And I actually did not realize that Estee Lauder started out by making her own products and basically walking through New York City trying to sell her products. Not like literally walking, but she did everything for her business, which was very not common back in the day. There was obviously not a lot of women-owned businesses back in the day, and she was doing it not all by herself because she was married and she had a kid, but she was doing it all, you know? She was making the products, she was marketing them, selling them, she was doing everything that she could. And so I just loved the story and hearing about everything that she did for her business, and then also all of her relationships, and of course the best friend who is basically telling this whole story. And then before I dive into all these series I want to recommend for the fall, I do want to talk about a couple cozy mysteries that I have, which it is a duology, so I feel like it will transition us nicely to talk about all the series that I recommend. But I feel like I can't do this video and not recommend a cozy mystery for you all because I feel like a lot of people love cozy mysteries in the fall. This one in particular I recommend if you love cats and you're looking for a cozy mystery. This is Lady Takes the Case. I can't remember book number 2 off the top of my head, but this is book number 1, and basically you are following our main character and her cat as they solve this murder mystery. And it's also set, I think, like 1800s England, so that whole atmosphere is so exciting to me. I love that era of England. I always call it like Lords and Ladies era of England, Regency era. I don't know why I always call it Lords and Ladies, but I love that era mixed with the cat helping her solve this mystery. It was just so fun. Moving on to series, the first series I want to recommend is the Robert Langdon series. This is by Dan Brown, and the series actually starts with Angels and Demons, but I feel like most people are familiar with the Da Vinci Code, which is book number 2, and you can definitely read these out of order. I feel like most people have just read the Da Vinci Code because of the movie, but basically this entire series follows Robert Langdon as he is trying to uncover certain mysteries. So in the Da Vinci Code, he is basically trying to solve this mystery while using Da Vinci's art. And I think about this entire series so often because of how Dan Brown has managed to weave this story into real life, like facts and real life conspiracy theories. And if you like, what is that movie? What is that movie? What is that movie? These are movies as well, but what is that movie? Oh my gosh, why can't I remember? Oh, National Treasure. If you like National Treasure, 100% recommend these books. Next, we're gonna talk about a series that was very popular on OG TikTok, I believe, and I read this about a month ago at this point, and I still think about these books all the time. And I'm just gonna call this the Mind series so that YouTube doesn't flag me, but this is a 5-book series and it's a thriller mixed with a romance, and I have realized I love that combination. A thriller mixed with a romance is the perfect combination in my opinion, especially for fall books. I love thrillers for the fall and I love romance for any time, so it just works. But basically our main character is a serial killer and she meets this guy. Come to find out, this guy works for the FBI and he is unknowingly trying to catch her. And I feel like that's all you need to know before going into these books. I am obsessed with them. 3 out of 5 of these books were 5 stars for me, which I don't know if that has ever happened with a series ever. I feel like normally my ratings are a little bit like this with the series. This one, no, it was 4 star, 4 star, 5 star, 5 star, 5 star. The next series I want to talk about, I actually have only read the first book in the series, so I meant to talk about it earlier, but I forgot. So we're gonna loop back around and talk about this book because this is the Lancaster Prep series. A lot of people were reading the second book in this series a while ago, which is A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime, because you can read these books as standalones or you can read them like I am and read the entire series. I've heard it doesn't matter. I'm not going to confirm or deny that because I obviously have not read the series. I've only read the first one, but this entire series takes place at Lancaster Prep, which is a boarding school. Anything with a boarding school or like the school vibe, I'm gonna try to read it in the fall because that just reminds me of going back to school. And I love a good boarding school vibe because I love reading about rich people, first off, and second off, if it's in like a historic boarding school, jealous. I used to want to go to a boarding school so badly. I think that was because of Harry Potter though. So anyways, this book is actually a bully romance and I didn't think that I would like a bully romance until I read this book. This book does bully romance perfectly because you can see them connect right from the start of the story, but at the same time they are both immediately mean to each other and they kind of immediately just bump heads. And I will say there are some moments where the guy does take it, like, he doesn't take it too far, but I'm just like, why are you being meaner than she's being meaner to you? You know what I mean? Like, she's supposed to be meaner to you than you're meaner than her. That probably didn't make any sense. But I really enjoyed the way that they immediately just didn't like each other. They immediately guarded their feelings, but obviously you work all of that out. It is a pretty junky romance book, but I think it's worth it. I also wanted to warn you that this is very much not a closed door romance at all. So if you're looking for a closed door romance, this is not it. Next, I want to recommend the entire Lunar Chronicles series. I only have Cinder with me right now, but I recommend this entire series. I think it's 5 books or maybe it's 4 books and 2 novellas. I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head, but this is a YA fantasy and it does have a little subplot of romance in it, but basically each one of these books follows a loose fairy tale retelling. So Cinder follows a very loose Cinderella retelling, and you have our main character Cinder, who is a cyborg and her biological parents have died, so she is living with her stepmom and her stepmom treats her so poorly. There's also this giant plague going on and she ends up meeting the prince and just a bunch of things happen. She needs to fix a bunch of things all while this deadly plague is going on and her kingdom is kind of collapsing. I read these in middle school, but then I also have gone back and reread them as an adult and I still love them just as much. I feel like they work for any age range. The last series I have to recommend to you all is the Natural series. I read these books I think maybe last fall. I can't remember. I have an entire reading vlog out on these if you are curious. It is spoiler free if you want to watch. These books are also YA and you have a group of high schoolers that have these natural abilities that allow them to work with the FBI in this kind of program. So they are helping solve cases and I loved that so much. I honestly love any book where they're trying to like solve a case. This also reminds me of, what is it? The Naturalist, that TV show. So good, except they're in high school and there's a group of them. So you get that found family aspect and you also have like one major case that kind of strings through the entire series. So you are hooked the entire time. And to end this video, we are going to talk about my fall TBR. I have 9 books. I should have just made this 10 books to just make it easier. I don't know why I didn't, but we have 9 books on my fall TBR. We'll start with Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I'm trying to read more nonfiction books. It was actually my goal to read, I think, 10 nonfiction books this year, and now that we are getting to fall, I kind of circled back on that goal. I believe I've only read 4, so that's not very good, and if I want to reach that goal, I have to kind of pick up the pace. So I want to read this one. All I really know about this is that Dolly Alderton used to be a columnist, so I want to give it a try. I believe it's nonfiction. I could be wrong, but I'm like 99% sure it is nonfiction. The next book I want to read is The Lost Bookshop. I don't remember what this book is about though, to be so honest, but something about the cover just gives me fall vibes, so I want to read it in fall. The next book that I'm definitely going to read very soon is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe. I actually have this on Libby right now. All I know about this is that it's going to be an entire series where you kind of focus on each store in this little town, and a lot of people were comparing this book to Gilmore Girls when it first came out, so I definitely want to read it, but also a lot of people have said that you should just pick up this book for the vibe, like don't pick it up for like this immaculate story and writing style. So I'm kind of going into this book knowing that people say just to pick it up for the fall vibe, and I think I'm gonna read this in a video video very, very soon, so stay tuned. And then I have a couple books on Kindle Unlimited that I want to read, particularly before my free trial ends. I want to read Enchantra, which I read the first book last fall, so I feel like this book would be good to read this fall as well. Although I will say it came out in April, even though the cover definitely gives me fall vibes, but I don't really know what this book is about. But honestly, I probably wouldn't tell you anyway, just because it's the second book. I think it's just a duology though, but the first book is a fantasy and you follow our main character going through all of these trials, which I honestly should have recommended that book in this video. I don't know why I didn't, but highly recommend that one. I obviously liked it enough to want to read the second book. I just haven't gotten around to it yet. So hopefully this fall I will read that one. I also want to read Lessons in Loyalty, which is again a second book in a series, and it's also on Kindle Unlimited. I believe that this is a Greek retelling of some sort. I haven't looked super into it, but I did really enjoy the first one. I think I gave the first one 3.5 stars, so I'm excited to see where the story goes in this book. And then I talked about things I wanted to say earlier, and A Million Kisses in Your Lifetime, which is the second book in this series. I want to read that book as well, which this entire series is on Kindle Unlimited. I am just not sure if I will be able to read the entire series before my Kindle Unlimited free trial is up. Unfortunately, I don't think I'll be able to read them all. I do have 5 books left on the 25 books I wanted to read in 2025, so I figured if I read 2 books in the fall and then I can read the last 3 during like the Christmas winter season. So I want to read The Scorched Trials, which is the second book in the Maze Runner series, which this is a YA dystopian world, and I remember reading the very beginning of this forever ago and just never finishing it. I also know I watched the movie for this book, so if I get to it, I get to it. It's not super high on my TBR, obviously, but I definitely want to read it at some point. And I also definitely really want to finish the 25 books I wanted to read in 2025, which this one is also on that list. This is The Lost Man. My boyfriend actually read this book, but I don't think he loved it. But I definitely want to read it so that we can chat about it. Basically, what I know about this one is that it follows a brother who finds his other brother dead, and they're in a part of Texas where not a lot of people live around them, so there's not many suspects in this, if you catch my drift. And then the last book on my fall TBR is The Paris Library. This is set during World War II, which is one of my favorite historical periods to read about. And I believe our main character is a librarian during this time period. And if you don't know a ton about World War II, they did a lot of book burning. So I believe our librarian is going to have something in play with that, and also trying to save people from what is going on. So I think that this one will be very gut-wrenching, but I love a good World War II historical fiction novel. And that is it. That is all my fall book recommendations and my fall TBR. Let me know if you're planning to read any of these books this fall. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!